Hey guys, and welcome to another Schematics update. This time we want to talk about Starmancer, and we have a guest, Tyler.
Oh, hey there.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm perfectly fine, thanks. You're a dev of Starmancer. Can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm one of the two devs on Starmancer. My name's Tyler, I guess. The other dev is Victor. He's an artist, and I'm the programmer. Let's see. I'm from America. He's from Sweden. It's pretty saucy, I guess. I don't know.
So that's quite a long distance. How did you two end up working together?
Right, so back in the day, I had one of my friends was working on a Minecraft mod. I went over to his house one day. I looked at like the art on the mod, and I was like, oh my god, like this is actually really, like this artist that this guy's, that he has is really nice. And that happened to be Victor. And so then I weaseled my way into like their mod team. And then over the years, the rest of the team kind of like fell apart. And then there was just me and Victor. So apparently we met through Minecraft modding.
How is your workflow with the distance and time zones in mind? We have different time zones as well in our team, and it's quite complicated sometimes.
What me and Victor do is every Monday at 9 Eastern, we have like our weekly meeting. And then we talk about everything we want to do. We write it down. For us personally, we use Asana because it's free, and we can write all of our tasks in there. And then we're always using Discord to talk to each other with text and voice. But that's pretty much what we do. The distance is obviously an issue, but we try to front load most of our questions and most of the things that we need to collaborate on. We try and front load that towards the start of the week, so that we can get all those issues out of the way. But it's definitely an issue.
So I guess like the first kind of real question we have here is, what exactly is Starmancer for those who may not know?
Starmancer is like it's a space station building game similar to a Dwarf Fortress or Rimworld. So the nuts of it is that you're a player, you own a space station, and you have all these colonists on board that you're trying to keep alive. They need food, they need oxygen, they need to be warm. And then also they have to repair your station, and you have to expand the station. You need things like generators, ovens, bathrooms, bedrooms, and it's one of those sorts of games.
I'm kind of wondering what's the gameplay goal of Starmancer?
Yeah, so we don't really have much of an actual, I guess, super long-term goal. One idea that I had is maybe being similar to Roller Coaster Tycoon in that we might have small missions, right? So like in Roller Coaster Tycoon, you start a level right from scratch usually, and then you have a pretty simple goal, something like get 500 guests by year 2, and they need to be this level of happiness. And we were thinking of doing something like that with Starmancer, but we're certainly not set on the idea. And then as far as a long-term goal, right now our long-term goal is just be the best Starmancer you can be, where you can go out and do missions, where you can affect the other sort of factions that exist in the universe, so that once you've built up internally the station you want, you can go out and sort of have this fun macro game with the station that you've built.
What inspires the art of Starmancer?
Right, so obviously I'm just a programmer, so I'm not entirely sure, but I noticed from talking with Victor that he looks at games like Final Fantasy Tactics and even the Metroid games, right, and to look at sort of how their pixel art looks and sort of how the colors of all their scenes are. And then he uses those for inspiration. But he doesn't really just stop there. So he'll use like 3D scenes, like 3D renderings of space stations and even real pictures of space stations to really get like the coloring and sort of the dimensions and the scale of everything just right. Because it's super important that the player can place themselves in the world, and that for just a little bit they forget that they're actually playing a game. And so doing these things sort of helps to feel like at the end of the day, like, oh my gosh, I'm in this space station, and I can kind of feel like I'm one of the colonists inside.
The next one we have is, it's quite an open question. What does Starmancer make unique or stand out from other games like Rimworld and such?
Yeah, that's a good question. So obviously we don't want to just make a game that's an exact clone of something like Rimworld or Dwarf Fortress, because if we did, why would you play Starmancer, right? You might as well just play Rimworld because it has more features and it'll probably be more fun. It's a little more expanded. So like some of the things that I personally am kind of excited for in our game is there's a rumor system. And that ties in with the morale system. So colonists can get upset about things, and if they're too upset, they won't work. If they get super upset, they'll actually they'll start to break things on the station. And if they get really unhappy, they'll actually try and actively seek out your like physical embodiment. And by the way, the player has a physical embodiment on the station, and they'll try to destroy you. And so what the rumor system is it also ties in with the conversation system. So if a colonist experiences something, he'll talk to his friends about it, and then those friends will then talk to their other friends about the things that colonist A talked about. So you'll have colonist A talking to colonist B, and then colonist B will talk to colonist C, and then colonist C will learn about the bad things that happened to colonist A. And so some interesting gameplay that comes out of that is that if you have an area of the station that's sort of low class, you should sort of isolate those colonists so they don't infect the higher class colonists with their terrible living conditions. So it's kind of like you have these high class colonists living in sort of like maybe this utopia, and life's good for them. They don't know anything. They don't know that these bad things are happening like in the deep depths of the station. They just think everything's sort of normal, right? And then you have these other colonists who are just in terrible conditions and they're super unhappy. And, you know, the happy colonists do their happy colonist things, and maybe they're your doctors and your teachers or something important. And then the unhappy people, maybe like they're your mechanics or your janitors, right? And if the two people were to ever meet, there could, you know, potentially be some sort of weird rebellion on your station. And I mean, that's just one specific feature, though. I really like the rumors, though. Yeah. So I was actually reading this book called Wool. My wife bought it for me. And so the whole book, it's about this sort of like underground bunker. It takes place in some sort of post-apocalyptic future and stuff like that. And this is I totally stole the idea from it, though. They had these basically terrible living conditions down in the bottom of the station, and then in the higher levels they have sort of their higher class areas, and then they had essentially sort of delivery people, and the delivery people was sort of you know, they'd send obviously boxes and stuff like that, but also rumors and messages and information from the bottom to the top and vice versa. So you'd have these rumors spreading, and you know, so I kind of, you know, took that for inspiration for Starmancer, or something that could be really cool.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting mechanic, because I can't think of any other game that I've played in a while that would have anything that in depth as far as communication goes between colonists. Now, this next question is a little bit silly, but what would you compare Starmancer to specifically?
Yeah, so probably it's most similar to a game like Rimworld or Dwarf Fortress, or maybe even sort of similar to something like Roller Coaster Tycoon, if you're into that sort of, you know, that sort of thing. We're kind of hoping, well, we're kind of torn on this, but maybe we'll incorporate some sort of roguelike aspects into it. So something maybe like, not hardcore, maybe like in Mountain Blade, for instance, by default, you can't save and keep playing. You can save and quit, but you can't save, play something, lose a battle, and reload your old save. So we would kind of like to do something like that. FTL similar to, maybe you played that, so that if something happens on your station, it's permanent. That makes, you know, that makes when you lose a colonist, it matters, right? Like you're nervous when pirates attack because somebody might die, and if somebody dies, they're dead. Like you can't go back and rewind and redo it.
I always argue that hardcore is the only proper way to play Rimworld, so.
Right, it absolutely is, because things have meaning. You know, they have consequences, and without consequences, the games aren't nearly as fun, in my opinion.
So the next one is a little bit more in depth, I think. I guess there are events that could happen on your station, and what could go wrong?
So the most obvious sort of negative event that could ever happen would be pirates attacking. Just for so obviously when pirates attack, it's pirates. They do their pirate stuff. But beyond the obvious things like pirates, machines break down over time. So if you don't have mechanics to maintain them, they will eventually break down. So if your life support, for instance, breaks down, then your colonists will run out of oxygen and they'll all die. If your generator breaks down, you know, you run out of electricity and all your colonists will die. So there's those sort of in-game things that can go wrong, you know, things like your generators or your food spoiling. And then sort of random cosmic events would be things like the pirate attacks. We're thinking maybe some sort of solar flare. So we're not sure exactly what a solar flare would mechanically do, but probably would somehow affect the electricity on the station or something like that. maybe something a little more ridiculous like an asteroid hitting the station too, right? The plausibility of an asteroid actually scientifically hitting the station would be so low, but for gameplay it's interesting, so maybe we'll do something like that as well.
I mean, so the next question we have here is mood and morale. We have a note here that says it's kind of already been answered, but just how in depth does that system go?
So morale at the, I guess, highest level is pretty simple. It's something like things happen to colonists. If the colonists like the thing that happens to them, the colonists get happier. If they don't like the thing that happens to them, they get upset. And then it goes a little deeper than that too. If they learn that something good happens to a friend, they'll get happy. If they learn that something good happens to their enemy, they'll get sad. Also, colonists can have enemies and friends. And vice versa too. If something good happens to an enemy, colonists will get slightly upset because they're jealous. And then to build onto the morale system, there's also a class system. And as colonists, as the morale keeps going up, their sort of internal class level will keep going up. So if you have colonists who are super happy, essentially what happens is they stop caring about their basic necessities. So maybe you have a bunch of starving colonists, and for them, they really want food and shelter. They don't, if you give them like a painting or a fancy outfit, what do they care? Why would they? That doesn't improve their life, right? And then as the colonists get happier, for instance, maybe they stop caring about, okay, I have food, but now I want better quality food, or maybe now I want better bed, or I want my own bed, right? So when you combine those two things, what you have is these colonists who again can be at like these dirty depths of the station, and they're more or less happy enough just to have enough just to survive. And at the high level, you have people who they want self-expression, and those might be the people who make your art, who they might be your doctors and your teachers and that sort of stuff.
There are different jobs, obviously, and I guess the peeps all have different skills as well to suit their jobs, right?
Yeah, so we have two, I guess, categories of skills. They're sort of innate attributes, so that would be something like intelligence, maybe. And then there's also job-based skills. So, somebody could have really high intelligence and be a level 1 doctor. And then as they, do doctor stuff, they'll level up their doctor skills, and then they'll be a higher tier doctor. The resource mover is another good example. At level 0, a resource mover moves kind of slow with a box, and as they level up, they start to move faster. And then our idea is that once you reach a certain level with your job, maybe you can specialize. So the doctor might become the surgeon,
So just to expand on the skills and jobs question, are you working with a system where everybody kind of has priorities to do everything, or are the pawns more specific in what they can do?
That's a good question. So with our job system, colonists can have any number of jobs that the player wants, and the player assigns them a priority. So a colonist could be a lowest priority resource mover, and they could be maybe a high priority doctor. And so what that would mean is that if there was no doctor stuff that needed doing, that colonist would move boxes. And as soon as there was, maybe a colonist breaks his leg or something like that, now this colonist will immediately go into doctor mode, and he'll fix up the colonist. And so then you can kind of prioritize who you want to do stuff and sort of when they do the things.
So in games like this, you have to, build your base and build your station and make everything in order to survive. What kind of crafting and resource options do we have?
Yeah, so one of the actually like sort of tenets of our game is RPG crafting components, because players really like to, I guess, collect rare resources and do something interesting with those rare resources. It's fun to just go out and find some, rare elements out in the, on some station somewhere, go back and do something with it. So we certainly want to have different tiers of things. So at the lowest level, maybe you go out to an asteroid and you mine ore. And with the ore, you get metal, and metal's sort of, some sort of generic, building component. But then at a higher level, maybe there's special weapons or special areas, or maybe like a nuclear reactor. And in order to build a nuclear reactor, maybe you need uranium. And so to get uranium, there's a few options. Maybe you have to go out and mine it on a specific planet. So maybe you go to a planet and you survey it and see, okay, it has uranium on the surface, so I'm going to mine it. I'll do that. I'll get the uranium. or maybe you have to do a special mission with an enemy faction or even a friendly faction to get the uranium. Also, I guess a difficult thing with this type of game too is the player himself doesn't really have an inventory. So what the player can kind of build and collect is obviously just, you know, more buildings, more rooms, you know, more objects and that sort of stuff. But anyway, but that's absolutely how we would do it is with, you know, a rare resource like uranium that's required to build a nuclear reactor.
Yeah, because, you know, in like Rimworld, your resources are just kind of all over the map and you're just kind of drifting around in space. So I kind of cock my head at that and go, it's like, okay, we're going to like dock on an asteroid, or how are we going to get resources here? So
is losing fun? I mean, is it hard, the game in general, for players who don't know what to expect from the game? So do you think it's attractive to lose?
Yeah, so games like this are kind of in a weird spot in that players don't want to lose, but it's really fun to watch a colony go up in flames. So like it puts this really weird barrier where you want really interesting things to happen when the player is losing. Like it's so awesome if, you know, the life support goes out and everyone's, you know, gasping for breath and they're running around, they're pounding on doors, or there's fires, or there's pirates and there's blood everywhere. Like that's awesome. But at the same time, you know, losing also isn't fun. Like it's not fun to spend 2 hours working on something and now, you know, you die, right? It's all over and now you just wasted 2 hours and it's gone forever. So it's really hard. And I don't think I can just give like one answer, like one perfect answer and say, yes, losing will be fun. But something that we are striving for is that there should be consequences to your actions and clear-cut consequences. So for instance, if pirates attack you, it shouldn't just be because, oh, well, there was a dice roll and now there's pirates and too bad for you. It should be because maybe you made yourself an easy target. Like maybe you've stockpiled too much stuff. And so that if you do lose, you can learn from it. You can learn, okay, well, why did I get attacked by pirates? What could I do next time to prevent this? So that way it's not just random chaos. Like there's a reason to it, you know? Like maybe, okay, a solar flare happened. Well, maybe I didn't, you know, build some sort of wire shielding or something like that. Or maybe I could have built thicker walls, or maybe I could have built several generators and left them unconnected so that the life support has its own generator system and maybe something like the bedrooms have their own. And so then anyway, but in that way, losing is slightly less frustrating if there's sort of a clear reason why you lost and what you can do next time to not lose.
Cool. Games like Dwarf Fortress and Rimworld have this innate ability to tell a fantastic story within one round of within one game, because you start with nothing. You start with characters that are more or less blank slates. They develop relationships, and then the game kind of periodically throws situations at you to cause interesting things to happen. When I play Rimworld, I don't care if I win or lose. In fact, I expect to lose. I just want to run through and create a story that's as interesting as possible. And it's to the point with some of these games where I hear people describing Dwarf Fortress as an interactive storyteller almost more than a video game. So I'm curious, do you have anything to emphasize storytelling in Starmancer?
Yeah, so it ties back, I think, to sort of maybe consequences. So what we want, when things happen in the game, we want them to happen for at least some sort of reason. And even if the player doesn't directly know the reason, maybe he can sort of guess. So like, for instance, the reason that colonists form relationships is so that you can have enemy colonists, and then you want to know, okay, what happens if I put two colonists as roommates who hate each other, right? Do they maybe attack each other? Do they stab each other? Do they steal from each other? What happens, you know, when you know, your chef gets mad and stabs your mechanic and now you don't have a mechanic? And that by itself is a really interesting story, but also it ties back with gameplay mechanics. So so that every single playthrough is definitely unique. And when you look at games like maybe Space Station 13, right, the funness of it isn't the raw mechanics. I mean, the raw mechanics are, I mean, they're pretty rough, right? Certainly would be a nice way of saying it. But the stories are what's really awesome. I mean, when you play Space Station 13, you're essentially an NPC. Like, that's crazy, right?
It's NPC,
like,
the video game.
You have 20 people pretending to be an NPC at the same time, and everyone's just totally okay with it because it's fun, because those stories are awesome. And it totally ties back to making losing fun. It ties back to when something crazy happens, you want that awesome story. Because as fun as a story is where nothing bad happens and you take over the universe, it's never as awesome as a story where your life support fails and, you know, half your colony dies, and you have to decide, like, okay, well, I see that there's fire here and I need to lock this door because otherwise the fire will spread, and those people inside are going to die, but, you know, half my colonist, you know, survives. Or even like one of my favorite sort of things in Dwarf Fortress is when all of your dwarfs sort of die and there's like this massacre, and then you get these immigrants, and like these immigrants, they come to this like this fortress, and there's just bodies everywhere, and there's just blood, and it's just like, and they go crazy instantly, and I just love that, sort of putting myself in their shoes. I mean, that's right, and that's even why we have, like, one of the reasons we have blood on the walls is because it's awesome, because you can see that story, and even once all the bodies are cleared away, you can still see that story for a little bit. Anyway, so stories are super important for this sort of game, and we're 100% striving for it, because, I mean, we're like immersion snobs, I guess, me and Victor. Like, we love immersion in our games.
What's so compelling to you in this type of game?
So I really like strategy games, right? But I like them more sort of, I guess, personal or something. So games like, I don't know, like a Total War game, for instance, or even a Civilization game. It's okay, but it's kind of too large scale. So I really like the you know, the individualness of games like this, where you can see an individual person's name, right? You can click on a colonist and he has a name, and he has maybe a backstory, and he has things that he likes, and he has friends, right? And then you can take all these small elements together, and you can make a station that you know, that does something interesting, that exists in the world. And then you take that station, and then you can go and maybe do missions with other factions. You can talk to other factions, you can trade, you can engage in diplomacy. And so if you want to, you can have this sort of really small micro game where you're just focusing on, I don't know, maybe you make this weird, almost like a Fallout shelter, right, from the Fallout games sort of thing, where you make just, what happens if I have a colony of all males, or what happens if I have a colony of all females, or what happens if, you know, I only feed my people cheese, right? What sort of things happen when I do that? And so I just love, I mean, everyone loves sandbox games, of course, but I mean, I really like sort of this idea that, you know, I'm in control of the station, and I can make it tell the story that I want, you know, to tell, or even the story that I don't want it to tell.
Those are the best ones.
It's really usually what happens, quite honestly. It's just like, oh crap, I didn't know that was going to happen.
So just to kind of wrap things up here a little bit, what do you think are what do you think is the future of Starmancer and things like Patreon?
So it's really fun. Like, I won't say it's always fun. It's quite a commitment to make a video game. Things take a lot longer than I think the average person sort of thinks. You know, in their head, they have this idea like, oh yeah, I sort of get it. There's a time commitment to making a game, but making a game takes a lot longer than you think. And so, and also, by the way, while you're making the game, you still need to eat. You have to pay your rent, and you have to pay for your electricity, and, you know, all that sort of stuff. You know, if you like Starmancer, you know, just support us on Patreon, support us however you want. Just share about it. Even just honestly, getting out the message of the game on social media is super helpful, right? Because every single person who learns about the game, maybe they like the game, and it takes you, 5 seconds to do it, and maybe it's super helpful to us.
Well, this has been fun. Is there any final thoughts that you have before we close this off?
Yeah, so if you like Starmancer, you can follow us on Twitter, or Facebook, or Google+, or Player.me, or Tumblr, and so you can see sort of, our daily posts. You can go to our website, playstarmancer.com, and you can see more examples of what Starmancer is, and you can visually see that instead of just listening to me talk about it.
Cool. And to anybody watching, I guess thanks for watching. Adfo, can you take us out?
Oh yeah, my best thing. Yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for being here, Tyler. And for our viewers and listeners, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, feel free to post a comment in the comment section down below. And thanks for listening. See you next time. Bye.